Hello, everybody. We have such a special guest today. If you're watching on YouTube, you will see her. We're doing the shake. My dear friend, colleague, client, Hailey. Are you officially going by Ellis?
I think by the time this airs, it will be Ellis Kelly legally. So we'll just go with that. Yes.
Yes, I love it. So Hailey is coming to us today, and we are going to have a really vulnerable, truthful conversation about going through a divorce while running a business. And I had the opportunity and honor of being on Hailey's podcast, and she really wanted to open up to her audience about what her past year had actually been like behind the scenes. And I thought it was so brave and it was so powerful for her listeners and her clients, even who didn't really know the depth of what she had gone through. And having not been through a divorce, but being a product of divorce, my parents are divorced. I really wanted to bring that here for all of you. So Hailey, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a fulfilling moment to talk with you about my divorce on my podcast. And I'm just excited to be able to continue this conversation.
Me too, because it is, these things, divorce, death, grief, it's like we're taught to do that privately.
Yeah.
And alone. And it is a private journey. Of course, we each have to walk that path alone, but that doesn't mean you can't get support and, be a beacon of light for others. And I knew the timing of this was great because you are on the other side. And I think that when you're in it, you don't know if you're going to get to the other side.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think a couple of things I want to say. I appreciate the way you talk about I've not been through a divorce, but I'm a product of a divorce, but I almost argue that you also have been through a divorce, right? Like you also have been through a divorce. And when you're in it, that story is mine, but it's also my ex's. It's also my kid's story. It's also my family, aunts and cousins and in-laws, are all experiencing a divorce as well. And with divorce rates, I think in the US, or I think globally, they're at 50%. And then second marriage divorce rates are at 65%, right? Lots of people are experiencing this. We're just not talking about it.
Yes.
And not looking at the implications of this process on our work and on our lives and what it means and all. We're just tucking it off to the side and I don't know, hoping it goes away. But they're really critical, important parts of our stories as the spouses in it, but also the stories of our kids and our in-laws and our families. So I think let's talk about it.
Yeah, this is called real life. This is not called Instagram life.
Yeah.
Right? Real life is messy and filled with ups and downs while you're running a business, while you're raising a child, right? And being able to talk about the realness of life is what both you and I are put on earth to do, right? Let's just pull the mask back and tell the people what it's like, because I would like to say that millionaires talk about shit. We don't hide from it, right? And millionaires in the making are here to learn, from each other. So, so tell the people about your business first, if this is the first time they're meeting you, what you do, and then we'll get into kind of how this year went down for you.
Yes. So hello, everyone. My name is Hailey, and I'm a business strategist and an entrepreneurship coach. So I specifically help successful entrepreneurs create compelling visions for their work and their lives a year from now, and then bring that into reality in 12 months. So that's my core business. But I also am an entrepreneur and keep a small portfolio of businesses, some of which I sold off last year in the divorce process because I wanted the cash, right? So I talk a lot about business as assets, as ways to support yourself, as ways to express yourself, and kind of support people in becoming really powerful, lifelong entrepreneurs.
I love it. You know that. I love everything about it. Okay, so tell everyone how successful your business is. It's something we don't talk about a lot, but tell the people.
Yeah. So last year, I did a little bit over $200,000 in revenue. Um, and that was my second year doing that. And my, like at the 2.5 year mark of coaching. And so I think overall as an entrepreneur in the last 4.5 years, I've cash collected, like, I think it's close to $900,000 in the last couple of years. Um, but it was so fascinating having my second 200 plus year, but only working like 3 days a week and having so much of my brain power be elsewhere. So the first 200K year was like, I'm all in and I'm really focused. And I'm like, it felt like climbing a mountain, just like, okay, I'm all like really focused. And then last year making 200K was like, well, here's what I have in terms of brain capacity. Here's what I have
Yes.
in terms of being able to show up and create a 200K. So for me, and thanks to coaching from my glorious coach, Doreen, putting that in the right perspective has been really important, and a large part of what I've been doing. We're kind of at the end of January, right? So people are having, their end of year reflections. And part of my work has just been to really organize that properly in my mind, right? I'm a person that is deeply ambitious. Like I know all of you are. Like I have goals to, have a $2.4 million portfolio by the time I'm 40, so I can live off the dividend income and fat fire and like all the things. But we don't account for things like divorce or chronic illness or intensive grief from losing a partner, spouse, child, parent. Like all of that is also kind of wrapped in this process. Real life is wrapped in this process. And so it's just really fascinating to see, like, oh, instead of doubling like I wanted to from it was probably like, I don't know, 240, 250 to 500,000, I did another 200K ish. And then, but in like truly half the time, like quite literally
Yes.
percent of the effort. So that's been interesting.
And so incredible because it allowed you, it allowed you to make this decision around your marriage
Yeah.
that had been weighing on you to make.
Yeah.
So tell the people about that whole
Yeah.
process, because I think that this is so important to hear from you.
Yes. Okay. So I told my ex, like, hey, I'm talking about our divorce on the internets and all the things. And so
Yeah.
he knows all of the things that I'm saying. It's not like a secret. But our marriage was one that was not like, no one had cheated. There was no abuse. Like it wasn't like a unsafe marriage.
Yeah.
This was a partnership that was not working anymore. We had been working on it for years and years and years and trying to get it to work for years and years and years, until I got to a point of just saying like, hey, what if our relationship just shifted? Like, what if we didn't try to continue to force this and supported each other as co-parents, as, the people that love our kids, people that have known each other for close to, I don't know, 14, 15 years at this point. Like, um, I attribute my ability to kind of offer that as a option for how our relationship can look so much to how I had learned how I have learned how to care about myself, respect myself, respect my desires, um, the way that I expect people to relate to me, and not just in my romantic relationships, but my kids, my friends, my colleagues, or whatever. Like coaching and entrepreneurship and like the building up of myself kind of created a bottom floor for the quality of relationships that I'm willing to have. And as that floor became solidified and trying to pull the marriage above it and trying to pull the marriage above and trying to pull the marriage above and it just not working, like, hey, actually, what are the other options is what came on the table. And so it very much was a choice in my case, and I'll take full responsibility for that. But I think what it allowed was me to be able to, I think to truly have a standard, a bottom floor standard of how I want to relate to humans in all these different aspects. And so, I feel like I'm just talking, but yes, those are kind of the initial pieces.
Yeah. And like, what was that like to realize that you had a standard? Because had you seen a standard put in place before in your family history?
Oh my gosh, no. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. This is so important to hear.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like and I love my parents. My mother has since passed. My parents had and I think lots of relationships before the last like 50 years or so where this is a marriage of convenience. Like we can learn to love each other. We both parties are coming together for what the marriage, sort of shelter socially, financially, whatever that this relationship creates. And if there is love and kindness and joy there, amazing. But those things are very secondary to the protection that the marriage creates. Entrepreneurship and my ability to provide most of those things for myself, and even to support my ex in finding those things for himself, meant that like, wow, we don't need this particular structure of relationship to hold that for us, because we can create those things on our own. And I think a lot about my mom and what she would think about my choices.
Yeah,
now.
I bet. We never talked about this, so I can't wait to hear what you would think.
And actually just had a conversation with my aunt, my Gigi.
Yeah.
My Gigi.
Yeah. Shout out Gigi.
Shout out to Gigi. But I just had a conversation with her last night, and she asked the question, what do you think your mom would say? Like, what do you think she would have said? And I was like, oh, yeah. She would have been like, take care of yourself. She would have been like, don't be any place you don't need to be. And and my Gigi was like, yeah, that's exactly what she would have said, while popping an Oreo in her mouth and watching her shows. Like, that's exactly what my mother would have said. And so I believe that is what my mother would have communicated and said, and had someone in a previous generation who, I mean, she's been married to her literal high school sweetheart forever and is still like, yeah, this isn't working. But so I guess I have it has not been modeled well in totality in my family. My parents had a very complicated relationship that had a lot more to do with the safety and setup of marriage than necessarily their care for each other, which grew over time. But the ability for a woman to say, this isn't working for me. Can we get it to work? Because y'all, it wasn't like one day I just woke up and was like, yay, okay, well, like, I don't want to do this anymore, so divorce. It was several years of like, no, but really, can we get it to work? What about this? What about that? Have we tried this? Let's go talk to this pastor. Let's go get this counseling. Let's go read this book.
Yes.
For years. I don't think anyone in my family before now has had the option to just say, this actually isn't working. And I will not continue to destroy myself in an attempt to keep this together for the sake of keeping it together.
It's so interesting as I'm listening to you talk, and I've heard this, right? I mean, I've been with you through this. It's also amazing to me that your business can support you getting the counseling, you getting the support, you getting the help. It's like, had you not had that income and that revenue, and so it's just such a beautiful example of how businesses can truly support your greatest good.
And that's like, let's talk about that for a second. Cause y'all, being well after a divorce, like this is not cheap. Like it was not like expensive.
My God, we should have a whole podcast episode. I like just put my hands in the air, a whole podcast episode on how much it costs to support yourself through and out of the darkness.
Yeah.
To get really good care.
Yes.
That will save your life, right? Like, and being willing to do whatever it takes.
Yep. Yeah. So like the identity that I had built up as an entrepreneur up until now has been, whenever I need something, whenever my family needs something, I figure out how to pay for it. I know I can be good at sales. I know I can make money. And so as I needed those things, because we had used those things in the past for trips, for, figuring out a teaching a private school solution for my kid during the 2020 COVID year, like, I know I can figure out how to make money whenever I need it, but being able to turn that faucet on for myself, I think I saw in the kind of 1.5 2-year cycle of like, I think I want to get a divorce to actually this is done. I think I saw like 2 or 3 different therapists. I hired multiple life coaches. I had like IV treatments, like health, just biologically supporting myself with health treatments, so much rest, the ability to just work 2.5, 3 days a week, or to work half days all week long when I needed to. Like, that is expensive. And like, I'm so thankful to what I had built up as an entrepreneur to pay for all of that, because I think like, it's not, you don't have to have those things to heal, but it does, like, healing, change, transformation costs either time or money, usually a combination of both. And so what you don't spend money to fast track that solution, it does take time. And so I'm just incredibly grateful that I know how to wield money as one of the tools from my, entrepreneurship journey, because that made it so that I'm not like magically healed and everything is perfect now.
Right.
But I'm also very okay. Like, I'm also fine. And then we haven't even talked about, again, my child.
Yeah.
Saw a therapist for a good portion of last year, right? And just making sure that he was well cared for, and having the ability to make money in my business meant that I wasn't like maybe getting a second job, and I could put him to bed almost every single night and sit with him and talk with him. And
Oh, my heart.
yeah, so like, it is just a tremendous, I care about entrepreneurship because of like, money is fun and business is fun and building things is fun and interesting. And also entrepreneurship as a way to move around the world, as a way of self-expression, as a way to protect yourself, create options for yourself. All of that is so, the identity of it and what the ripple out effects of it is what is so important to me about entrepreneurship.
We could have like, I don't know, 7 more podcasts now, because I have so many things I want to say. But it's so true. I mean, I just, as you're talking, I'm thinking about before my entrepreneurship and deep in my grief, like I would have been, I remember this one specific time. I was working from home from an Indian-based company. I was global VP of marketing. They had fired the CEO that I felt safe under, and they brought me back. They made me come back to work 6 weeks, because like, your baby died, so you can't have 3 months. Like, she's not here to take care of, so you don't matter. You must come back to work. So I'm back to work. I'm listening to a conference call. It's all the executives. They're all bullshitting around stupid shit, around something this, marketing this, complaining. And I just put it on mute and I sobbed. I sobbed and I sobbed and I sobbed. And I was like, I literally was thinking to myself, like, I am here trying to survive, and my bullshit meter is at 0 for this. I cannot. And it's like, and it's those times that, you really realize that you're ready. Mm-hmm. I would rather make no money, even though that was never the case for either one of us. If you know how to make money in one place, you know how to make it in another. But I would rather have the space to grieve and to just like have my life meet me where I was, instead of, force you in. So what made you want to work together, me and you?
Yes. I think we had been, we had been peers in, students or peers under different like coaching containers or different mentors. And so I've just been like, was like watching, and I just so deeply appreciated how focused on the soul and like the entity of the person as the core driving force for all the other work, right? Like all the other stuff, all the other strategy, all the other like whatever was as an outpouring of caring for like the soul of the person that was in front of you. And I think when I first encountered you, to be honest, I was 0% ready to have this conference. Like I was not ready for it. I was just like,
Yeah.
that's intense and I will be over here.
Yes. And that is so true for so many of us. Yeah. Yeah. That seems like a lot. And my system is not ready for that quite yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think my first in and working with you, I think I did the healing circles first.
Yeah. And I remember sitting with you when you shared you were getting a divorce, and I was like, I am here for you. Like I really deeply, because we had been, become friends, and I just like, I love you so much. Like, let me in, like, let me support you, but in a way that when you're ready, just know I'm here. Because having lost your mother, we had talked about grief, and then having this, it was like, I didn't see it coming. I didn't know this was going on behind the scenes for you.
And you know what? I just remembered the moment that I was like, oh, I'm going to hire Doreen. I just remembered the moment as you were talking, but we were sitting chit-chatting, and what you had said about it, about the grief, about my mom, about, I don't know, I think maybe I had just communicated about my divorce, or it was literally like maybe the day or two before, but you had said like, we only go as fast as your body can handle. Like we only go as deep or as fast as your body can handle. And that was such a tremendous relief to me. Like I have the amount of trauma that I've experienced in my lifetime. I'm only 33 and it is quite high.
Yeah.
And I was definitely unskilled with it a year ago, but even now I'm very careful about how I engage with that, the trauma and the remnants of that, and your willingness to be like, oh, we only go as far as we can go. Like, we're not going to like, okay, let's start from birth and your experiences with homelessness. Let's just, no, I can't.
Right.
Man, it's a Tuesday afternoon. I can't do that. So,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
so that was the moment that I was like, oh, you showed me a way that I could do this and still participate in my life and not have to like excavate all of the things at once. And I was like, oh, okay.
Because it is kind of like, and same, right? It's like, well, where would I start? And for me, it was so clear where I would start, because I would like just start with the thing that's most prevalent, right? But it's like, oh, but our bodies know once we get in and start doing the work, the other things that didn't get touched are going to come up. And so it sends up red flags.
Yes.
And so it's like, yeah, I always say like, it's like you're with my clients like yourself who want to do the work, know they need to do the work, but are really scared. That this was me too. It's kind of like you grab my hand, but your heels are digging into the sand. It's like, I want to, but I'm afraid, but I want to, but I'm afraid, and that is so normal, because the system is not used to having this nourishing care. It doesn't know what it is.
No.
It doesn't know what it's like to go slow, because your whole life you've had to hustle and go fast.
Yes. Yes. And it's so like, so I worked with Doreen in her group experience, the healing circles, and a lot of that work was just about tools for, I think, connecting with and it was like tools for the excavation, like tools to kind of see our body and like, okay, what is happening, to have language to name the things, to like then be able to bring them out and then look at them and process them, which, correct me if that was not the point, but that's what I got out of it.
No, totally. Absolutely. I love how you just described that. Absolutely.
And so like I feel like pretty hard at it. It sounds strange to me to say like I worked hard at like these tools, but I feel like I worked hard to grasp them, to practice them. Like it really takes like actual practice.
Yes.
And so especially again for nervous systems or bodies that are just so used to going, it took a considerable amount of practice. There's one tool called orienting. I freaking hated it.
Yeah. Yeah. You and everyone else. Yep.
Yes. But it's just, and all it was slowing down for like 90 seconds. It was not that serious. But it was like gathering all these tools. And then, okay, once I had the tools, then we started to add in the one-on-one sessions and the one-on-one coaching. So I can actually like, okay, I've got tools over here on my side of the internet. I've got Doreen on that side of the internet. So we together can go in and start to like look at and release some of these things, like actually do the breaking up of the rock, if you will, in my excavation analogy, safely and can actually do that work. And so it's been, I mean, just tremendously valuable to not let new pain kind of settle in and harden with the divorce and we discussed this on my podcast, but like fresh grief always brings with it old grief. So there's things about my mother and my experience with my parents that I had not looked at, processed or whatever. So that came along to be looked at. And now there's like new, like fresh things to look at. And so I just feel really grateful to have like the tools and then the container to safely, I think excavation is a really good analogy for it, right? Because you don't just like go into a canyon and like, okay, let's see what we can find. Like, no, you need protective gear. You need somebody who's done this before. You need all of that stuff to actually make that experience fruitful. And so I was telling Doreen right before we got on this call, there's so many of our skills that are just the connective tissue, like things I didn't have before. And I am a coach. I have a degree in organizational leadership communication studies. I'm credentialing in interpersonal neurobiology. Like I'm a whole ass coach. And also there were tools that Doreen kind of brought and shared with me that adds the kind of connective tissue to the mindset work, but just the body work adds the connective tissue between the thought work and the strategy and all of that stuff.
It's interesting you say that. All of my one-on-one clients say it is a connected kind of a thing where they also do other things. They get other information. Of course, they're brilliant. All of my clients are brilliant. So they've got all of this education and skills. But in session, we're able to integrate them.
Yes.
And bring them home and have them all make sense to you as the whole person, coming back to like your soul, right? Like it's a homecoming.
Yeah.
Which seems like it would happen on its own, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I feel as though this is not, slippery is not the right word, but it is one of these things that I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, I would be looking at me now and be like, well, it must be nice, right? Like that you have all this stuff. And on one hand, I'm like, it is nice. This is absolutely a privilege that I have access to these. This absolutely is one of the ways in which my classism and all of the things, like I absolutely am a privileged person that I get to use these tools, and it does not negate the usefulness of said tools. It does not negate the transformation of said tools. Like, yeah, I think with coaching, the way I say it is the way I think of it is nobody needs it, but dear Lord, if you have access to it, holy shit.
Yes.
Right. Like, oh, it's like medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And just watching you behind the scenes continue to evolve your business, which you did this year. So I want you to tell everyone like exactly what happened. So here you are now, you made a decision. Just because you made the decision, and that's something I've told you many times, just because you said the words and made the decision does not make it your fault.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So, but the decision was made, and you had like big goals for the year. And now that you're feeling yourself, you're like, well, while I'm at it, these are not yours, but these are mine. You're like, what? Let's change this, and this, right? And I would love for you to just share with everyone while you were grieving, because one of the things I think people think is like, you need to be on this high vibe all the time to make money. Yeah. And there's no way you could have been high vibe. And you were still able to, and it's not just making the money, you were still able to like deeply serve your clients. Like you don't make money unless you're deeply serving and providing value. So Talk about that.
Yeah. So I'll push back, which is a very coachy thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it was my fault, but I do take responsibility because I was the one that raised my hand and said, this isn't working for me.
Mm.
And I think that's important. Like, I think that's important for my story. And especially as I talk about, I'm literally doing a live session with clients this week, how to change your life in 12 months. That responsibility part, I think, separate from like the shame of blame, like that part is really important. And that was part of what helped me to like be in the year while it was happening, right? Is that I picked this and I always have my own back about this stuff. That's part of that standard of it wasn't even all the way about how other people treat me, but also how I treat me. Here's the baseline standard is that I have my own back and I picked this and therefore I will support myself in this. Therefore, this is the decision we made. This is how we're going through it. I went as far as to make myself a decision matrix, like a divorce decision matrix of just here are the questions I can ask myself. If these things are still true, then when the brain's freaking out and I'm feeling really sad and restless and unsure, here's how I know I still made this choice for me. So my program initially had the POV of here are the 4 things that I'm going to help you, like really specific, very business oriented, like here are the 4 things I'm going to help you do, in these 12 months. And then as my clients experienced their 12 months, my clients had a separation, a marriage, a miscarriage, a massive move, like moving states. Like life was also happening for them.
Yes.
That some of the original plans, I was like, oh, well, you don't need that. You actually need this over here. So my very specific, here are the 4 things kind of pivoted to, how about I just help you create the most compelling vision for your life a year from now, not 5 years, not 10 years, not 20 years, but now that you can be in, and we can just bring that bad boy into reality. Like we can just do that. Cause I know how to do change and I know how to exist in the amount of failure necessary for change in 12 months.
That's so powerful.
Here was for me was like,
yeah,
exist such despair and grief and sadness and trying and failure and it not fitting. Right. So like I tried to sell my program a second time with here are the 4 things I'm going to teach you, and had my very first $0 launch in 4 years of business.
Shout out to your podcast 1 year from now where you talk about that.
Yeah.
I love that podcast episode.
Yeah. I talked about all of that. And part of it was just the incongruency of like, I don't think those 4 things are the 4 things. I think it's whatever each person is experiencing. So now, so I didn't sell any of my program the first like half of the year. And so that was like, okay, it's more about this compelling vision, the ability to bring it in a year from now. And to your original question, like what is necessary for that? Not being high vibe, not feeling good all the time. It's the ability to have the vision has to be personally compelling. There are decisions that have to be made. There's so many things that we just kind of leave floating out. And there are guarantee specific decisions that need to be made and acted on. So now I'm talking about it as vision, decision, and collision. Like you then have to be prepared for your vision to collide with reality and have the skills.
Yes, sister. Yes.
So like now that's what my work is. Now that's what my coaching is. But that's all a reality based out of the experience I had and the experience I had coaching my clients through their transformations last year. It's so fascinating because we had our end of year conversation with the very first cohort of the residency of 1 year from now, the residency. And like all of them were like, well, this is what I said in January, but like half of it doesn't matter anymore. And I actually created this instead, which is much better and way more profitable and yada, yada, yada. So that was really funny to like, oh, technically none of you hit any of your goals, but you created this incredible thing. You did, 215 in 6 months while traveling across the country. You rebuilt your business. You went away for 9 months and came back even more profitable than you were before. Like these incredible things happened. But I think, I think about coaches, we go first, right? So like my ability to allow myself to like hold the vision, repeatedly fail and feel like crap and still go forward. And, with graciousness and compassion for myself and with all these tools to create something even more incredible than I could imagine, a truly different reality in 12 months.
Yeah. I love what you said about goals, which is like, just because we set them doesn't mean when we collide with reality and life happens to us that we can't change them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, okay, so last year was not a doubling year.
Mhm.
All right. But a huge win for your personal life.
Absolutely.
Like beyond,
Yeah.
and coming through it and out of it and the growth that happened there. And it's just, and same for your clients. It's like, yeah, so they may have not met their goals on paper, but they all met their goals because their goals changed based on what comes up in life. And that is so important for everyone to remember. Is like, in the 2 episodes ago, I did New Year's resolutions, and it's really just being resolute about a decision until you want to change your mind. That's it.
Love that. I love that, because that's what real life is. Like, that's what real life actually is.
Change your mind. And then you're resolute about that decision until you change your mind. That's it. And so it's just, it is giving everyone the grace of just having this, what is seeping out of you that I love so much is just such self-trust.
Yeah.
And that takes time to get there. It takes a lot of work, but being able to, like you said before we got on the call, like get in the body and like get really in there, and like the brain wasn't coming up with the things. And so you were like, what would Doreen do? Explain that process that you just went through to them so they can see how you would take some of the tools that I'm on here, like talking about, shouting from the rooftops, and everyone's like, what are you talking about? What is the nervous system? Give an example of what you were sharing with me just before we got on the call.
So I'll do like a before and after, because I've had this experience before, right? So like it's Monday, we're recording this on a Monday, and I'm sitting down to my desk and I'm feeling, annoyed about some business thing that happened. And also my kid like totally didn't tell his teacher a thing. So now I got to send emails about that. So I'm bringing all of that to my work, right? So I'm sitting down, getting ready to work, and my brain is just so scattered, and I can't like grasp or focus on like my vision or my intention, what I'm supposed to be working on today. And so my regular coaching skills pre-Doreen were like, okay, I do a brain dump. I can do some thought models, which means just to examine like, okay, what is this thought? And if I follow this thought through, what kind of results will that create for me? It's a very like intellectualized experience. All of it lives in my head.
Yeah, it's like chin up.
Yes, right? And I think there's value in that work. Obviously, I think there's value in that work as a coach, but it's like trying to put out a fire from the very center of a fire. You know what I mean? Like you're already in your head. Like maybe take a step out so you can actually put this fire out, right? But so pre-Doreen, like I would have kept spinning and just like, okay, fine, I'll just pick some tasks to do, which in the short term doesn't sound terrible because it's quote unquote productive. But weeks and weeks and weeks of just picking some tasks to do, you're only picking the things that are on fire, and that's not moving you any closer to where you're trying to get to in life, right? So doing that weeks and weeks at a time is just not helpful. Post Doreen, I was so annoyed about it, but I did it. I was like, what would Doreen do in this moment? She would say, get your body. What is your body experiencing? And I just had like, to be clear, we've been working together for at least 7 months, at least at this point.
And we're going for another year.
Yeah, right. We're on for the rest of this year. But it's been at least 7 months, and I still had to like fight myself a little bit to like, okay, no, but really, turn off your phone. No, but really, get off Instagram. Like, we're doing this.
Yeah.
And so I just want to acknowledge that, because even though I know the power of these tools, I still have to like bring my brain to this work, but just like asking my body what's going on. And it was so fascinating that like, focusing on the sensations, not necessarily overthinking about what the sensations mean.
Right.
It was like a little burp up I mean, maybe 2 or 3 minutes of just sadness, of just
Yeah.
like real frustration or disappointment from stuff that happened last week and over the weekend with friends and family, just stuff that needed to come up,
Yes.
like like burped it out kind of. And it was only a few minutes. And I, stopped when I wasn't feeling any particular sensations elsewhere, and then kind of sat back down and just checked in with myself. And was like, oh, okay, yeah, actually, I can kind of connect with my vision now. Here's my intention. Here's what I actually want. Here's what's priority this week. And it started to flow again. So it's just the whole thing total maybe was 20 minutes, maybe, but that 20 minutes, I think, just rescued my week. And
Yes.
to do that over and over again is what changes the trajectory of my life.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That is it. And also, I will say I'm so proud of you for being able to take the tools and do them on your own and have that kind of a result. So that is all about you implementing the tools, because it is difficult to do on your own. As you and I both know, in the beginning, it really does take that container. It takes being witnessed in it for you to feel safe enough to get into the body. But now you're to a point where like you're able to drop in, you're able to clear what was really going on, and you're able to feel that sadness and like, oh, okay, the reason I'm feeling so scattered has nothing to do with whatever my head says. It's actually to do with this thing that I didn't give the attention to over the weekend that needs to be felt. And I think of our feelings as the little person inside of us. And like, you're over here, like chopping dinner and like rushing around because you're late. And this child's like, but mommy, like, but mommy, I have a question. Right. And you're just like, not now, not now. I gotta go. I gotta do this. I gotta do over here. And I gotta clean. Oh, I gotta vacuum. People are coming over. Right. And this little person's like, but mommy, like mommy. Right. And it's like, when we turn to that little inner child, right, and we say, okay, what is it? They'd be like, oh, I'm just, sad about this. And you give them a hug, and using it in this example, and you just give them a hug. And then they're like, then they go off and play. That is exactly what you just described. It's like,
Yes.
yes, like when we give the attention where it needs, it can go back, it can resolve.
Yes.
Instead of carrying it with you, you have now this shadow following you around the house as you're trying to clean and prepare and all the things, right? Which takes twice as much energy and time. And it's really annoying and it's distracting and all the things.
Yeah. Like trying to have an in-depth conversation when you're a kid or a dog or multiple children are like right under your heels or whatever. Like you can't get deep. You can't like do the things you actually need to do. You can only do those shallow level tasks, like
Right.
whatever, chopping while you're half listening to them and not giving them your attention. It's a clearing. That's exactly it.
Yeah. And I think that having these tools in your tool belt while grieving was helpful, so that you could clear, you could know, first of all, you even had an awareness that something happened. So
Mhm.
well done on you. Like, oh, these things happened.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we have to thwart our reactions, what we call it in the nervous system world, because you don't maybe have the time or the energy, or your son was there. You don't want to have the reaction that you would have liked to have in front of him.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're protecting him. But then we have to go back in there and allow for those feelings to come out. So well done.
Thank you. And it's such a very different way of being, by the way. Like we are all very conditioned, especially as women and especially as people of color, um, conditioned to like your problems aren't that important. Like they're not big enough. They're not real problems. They're not real issues. The things that I'm needed to clear, honestly, I probably didn't give them attention because they didn't feel that significant in the moment. Maybe a second, but I was like, oh, this doesn't matter, and moved on. But here we are 2, 3, 4 days later, and I still can't focus. Like that shit needs to be reckoned with. Like you can't, right? And so it's just a different experience to like, again, I don't have to do this work. I could walk around, having, I love the child analogy, because it's like the things we don't clear, it's just like another kid. And now I'm like the woman in the shoe with like 30 children around me, that things I
Right.
needed
Yes.
to walk around like that. Absolutely not. right? Especially the goals that I have, the intentions that I have, the impact that I want to make on the world, the money that I want to make, absolutely not. That again is part of my standard of like, oh, I could and do the like, I'm so strong and I don't need my feelings. Y'all have fun with that. I'm gonna go make my money.
I'm going to go feel my feelings and then I'm going to
Right.
get focused. It's like feeling feelings leads to focus, and then off you go and running, and you're going to go serve your clients and yeah, create this incredible program. So, what is to kind of close, what do you want people to know about divorce?
Hmm. I think as prevalent as it is, and as many logistical details as there are to take care of, and even if you do it willingly, that is a form of like there will be grief,
Yeah.
and you've got to make space for it. You have to. Um, I think you especially need to be compassionate with yourself, because so much of your cognitive labor is going to go to little things like, you know, getting your vehicle in your name and making this appointment with the lawyer and that appointment with the mediator, and are the kids okay? And even the smallest things of like, okay, he's taking the TV and the dining room table, but I keep the couch. So now I got to go find those two people. Like, it just, there's so many details that is going to take up more of your cognitive load than you're going to think. And that's okay. Give it the space and trust yourself, like give it the space and support yourself, right? And whatever that means for you and whatever you need in term, if talk modalities are helpful for you, great, use them. If somatic modalities are helpful for you, great, use it. But don't act like just because it's common, it's easy.
Mhm. It's so good. Just because it's common, it's easy. And I love that the fact that like, even if it's your decision, even if you're taking personal responsibility, you still have all of that grief. And if you shame yourself for having grief, even though, you said the thing, then now you have shame and grief to work with.
Right. Like
Yeah.
the grief alone is enough. Just don't even, you don't
Right. Right. Yes. Okay. So where can people find you?
Yes. So I am online everywhere at oyfn.co. That stands for 1 year from now.co. So I have a podcast, 1 year from now. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook at oyfn.co. And then I also have an email newsletter. And if you would like to work with me, then you can join the residency. 1 year from now, the residency, and find details about that. I mean, truly anywhere on the internet.
Yeah. Tell everybody a little bit about the residency. Like it's a 12-month program, right?
So it is a 12-month program. There is one-on-one specific to you strategy sessions. There is group calls once a month to I really say those are to look for patterns amongst your peers. And then we also have entrepreneurial adventure, because there is something really special to leaving the environment that you were in for inspiration, for change, and honestly, just for fun when you need it and connection. So it's a 12-month program that is a hybrid of everything that I know in terms of how to create a compelling vision for yourself and then bring it into reality in a year.
I love it so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Doreen. This has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.